All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in again to the Everything Real Estate Show. This is our 1 year anniversary, our 52nd episode. And today I have Jaimie Robbins and Richard Robbins from RRI with me on the show. They're an awesome company and great guests for the show. We talk about a lot of things from going back to the basics. What exactly does going narrow and going deep mean? Advice for realtors in this market, in any market, and lots of just good life advice like accountability too. So I think you're going to enjoy the show a lot. Actually, I know you're going to enjoy the show a lot. And anyways, let's get to it. My name is Cody Kraus, and I'm a real estate broker owner that's obsessed with everything real estate. Investing, building, selling, developing, farming, you name it. I've been doing this since I was 18 years old, and I've learned a ton through trial and error, and I've met some of the coolest people ever. This is a show where I invite these people on to talk about their experiences and mine, plus everything else real estate. Let's go. All right, well, welcome back, everybody, to the Everything Real Estate Show. This episode is a special one for two reasons. It's episode number 52, which marks our 1 year working on this podcast on a weekly basis. So I really appreciate everybody that's been a guest, that's helped put this on, and especially to our viewers and our listeners, because otherwise there would be no point. The second reason that it's a big show today is because of the guests that I have on the show. And there's some very well-known names in the real estate industry around Canada. I'm not going to spend too much time introducing them. I'm going to let them do that. So today I have with me Jaimie and Richard Robbins from RRI. And for anybody who doesn't know or hasn't had the pleasure to get to know you guys, who is Jaimie and then who is Rich?
Well, my name is Jaimie. First of all, congratulations, Cody. 1 year of doing a podcast. We have one and we know how much work it is. So
Appreciate it.
congratulations on making it to 1 year. That's amazing. My name is Jaimie Robbins, and I've worked in the real estate industry. I always kind of joke my whole life, but officially for 12 years in the real estate coaching and events space, working in my family business, Richard Robbins International. I'm also a wife and a mom and feel very grateful for everything in my life.
Love it. Thanks. And who's Rich?
I'm Jamie's dad. Bottom line, yeah.
Love it.
So Richard Robbins, and I'm married to an amazing human, Sue. And we've been married for about 33 years. And of course, I got two kids. I got Jaimie being my oldest, and I've got Tanner being my youngest. He's out in Calgary now. And my wife and I started this company 26 years ago, Richard Robbins International, or as we refer to it now, RRI. And I think that's the new brand. And I started real estate when I was 24 as a salesperson. I had a brokerage when I was 27. And then when I was 38, we started this company. And when I had the brokerage, I used to do a lot of coaching and training of my people. And we were blessed that we ended up having the highest production per agent of any company in the trading area, actually by three. It was pretty incredible. And I thought to myself, well, if I can do this for the office, maybe I can do it for more people. That was, sort of the whole evolution of the company. And we just took what we did as a brokerage in terms of, events, training and coaching. And we just started to work with a much larger audience. So, we've done events really all over the world. So it's been a wonderful journey.
Awesome. Appreciate that intro. So you're saying that we went really broad because we went outside of, the local real estate market or brokerage that you
Mhm.
were operating. But at one point you were much broader too. Like you were touring, all over the States, speaking to the entire real estate industry, really in North America. And I know that you still do tours across Europe and speaking engagements in the States and things like that. But in the last decade that I've been involved with you guys, you really seem to have focused really just on Canadian realtors as a main, and specifically the real estate industry. Like you help people with sales, and you could transfer that to mortgages, insurance, life insurance. There's many other industries, but you've really decided to, I guess, niche down and say that, what, Canadian real estate industry is my bread and butter. Is that right?
Yeah, well, first of all, obviously I am Canadian. And I read a book many years ago and it said, go narrow and deep, narrow and deep, narrow and deep. And that book sort of inspired me because at one time I was probably too wide and shallow, if you know what I'm saying.
Yep.
So we had made a decision for many reasons. Quite honestly, we used to do 14 3-day events a year. We used to do 3 in Canada. We did 9 down in the US, and we did 1 in South Africa every year. So it was pretty crazy for a little while. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience, and it sure taught me an awful lot. But we reached a point that we thought, well, first of all, my wife dealt with some health challenges for a little while, and we had young kids at the time. So there's just a lot of things that came together at the same time that we thought, well, let's slow down a little bit and go really narrow and deep in Canada. And really, that's what we've done, as you said, for probably 13, 14 years now. And it's been an absolute blessing because I think we're very well known in Canada. I think we're very well branded in Canada. But it also gives me the opportunity to speak specifically to the Canadian market.
Yeah.
When you go a little broader, it's hard to get very specific. But I understand every market in Canada. I understand what's going on, and that puts us in a position where we can, help realtors like build a business and life they love, and that's our whole goal.
Awesome. So I think I'm going to call this episode Narrow and Deep because it's
Yeah.
probably the best place to take it. And I had a few questions, and I think I'm going to shift the order of those just on the topic of narrow and deep. So I think every realtor should read Gary Keller's book, Shift, and it kind of follows the timeline of what's happening in a real estate market when things shift, right? So when either interest rates go up or economic conditions change, much like what we saw here in Canada starting in 2022, right? We saw a shift up at the start of COVID and even many years prior to that. But in 2022, March specifically, interest rates started going down. Inflation was really catching up with households in Canada, so the market shifted downward. But we have a record number of agents in Canada, I think in every market in at that timeline, and still a lot coming into the business that were getting licensed through that timeline also. So I think Treb, if I'm not mistaken, you would know better than me, was up to 77,000 realtors at one point in the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. Here in Windsor, Essex County, we're at about 1,650 realtors, and that's still about the high that we were at in 2022. So that being said, when there's less sales happening, which is happening right now, there's a lot of things happening in Canada between, the tariffs, between we had a federal election, we witnessed a federal election down south. There's just a lot of uncertainty. That's Bank of Canada's basically word of the year is uncertainty this year. So market has shifted. The number of sales are down, but we have a record number of realtors in the Canadian, market overall, and especially even in once you break down different markets. I know Toronto has less now than they did in 2022, but a lot of markets still have a record number. I think it's kind of that point in time when you're going to see some realtors either racing to the bottom on, cutting commission or not being able to show their value because they're just desperate to have a deal. But also you're going to see realtors driving to other markets. And they're going to say, okay, well, if I'm going to, replace the income that I had in prior years, I'm going to need a certain number of deals. And if I can't get that locally, I'm going to have to spread the areas that I serve or the types of industries that I'm in. Maybe I'll get a part-time job. Maybe I'll have a side hustle. Do you want to maybe speak to, I guess you can go positive or negative both ways, but narrow and deep, I have a feeling is what you're going to suggest. Do you want to maybe both of you speak to that?
Yeah, you can go first, Dad.
Well, I think, first of all, we got to realize real estate is a wonderful, wonderful business, I think, because it's pure entrepreneurship.
Yep.
What I mean by that is that, let's face it, the barrier of entry into real estate is not that high. It's not like you got to go to university for 4 or 5 years. And people have big eyes when they get into real estate. They go, oh boy, real estate's fun. I get to sell houses. I love houses. I get to show property. And so it attracts a lot of people in the industry just because of the barrier of entry. Now that creates another problem, but no different than any entrepreneur if you think about it. And what ends up happening is the cream always rises to the top. And if you look at our industry right now, last time I checked the numbers, this was probably about a year ago, but it was like 6% of the agents were roughly controlling 95% of the business. And the struggle is real for a lot of agents because when you start to look at the numbers, For instance, here's some numbers for you right here. So in Canada, as an example, we got about 160,000 agents, roughly. Okay. We did the last couple months, we're doing about 35,000 transactions. Now, if you go to the peak of 2021, we did 65,000. But if you look at the 10-year average, it's about 45,000. So we're down substantially even from the 10-year average. So there's just less opportunities available.
So you said we're about 30,000 right now?
About 35,000.
35,000, and then your 10-year average is 45. Okay.
Yes. So we're down substantially from, what the numbers used to be. And what you're going to see is this is where skill matters. This is where motivation matters. This is where commitment matters. Because if you go back and study all the most difficult times in history, let's just talk about the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a very difficult time, but there was a lot of money made in the Great Depression. Because we have to realize there's always, always opportunity in any marketplace. The challenge is the level of commitment that people have to the industry. And I jokingly say all the time that a lot of real estate agents are giving it a try. They're not committed to the industry. And when the market was really, really good, as you know, Cody, better than anybody, that leads were falling from the sky. It was crazy what was going on, late 2020, 2021, early 22. It was crazy what was happening. I'd never seen it like it before in history. And when you go through a period of time like that, what ends up happening is sometimes we lose our discipline, we lose our skill because it's a little bit easier. And then all of a sudden it toughens up. And sometimes that's hard to get back for a lot of people, or they don't have the skill set. I would say the greatest example that Canada's faced right now. So an example, I have MAC Group. That's, every month where I mastermind with some of the top coaching clients that we have. And I sent a note to them on Monday, this past Monday, because I have my calls next Thursday. And I said, what is the biggest problem that you're trying to solve right now that you would like to be solved? And I want to discuss it on the call next week. And by far, the number one thing was pricing property.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have to worry about that in 2021. You couldn't underprice a house in 2021 because multiple offers. Well, to properly price a house, even though the agent might know what the price should be, what is the skill level of that person to be able to communicate to the seller to help the seller, what I call trip over the truth, to see what is real so they can make the best decision for themselves. Because prices are down 4% so far this year in Canada. I think they're going to fall further. And if they fall further, what ends up happening, Cody, is we start chasing the market down, right? And when the prices are going up, time is your friend. When prices are going down, time is your enemy. The longer you take to sell, the more money it costs you.
Yep.
So you got to get it right the first time. So that's why it requires a different skill right now. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of realtors out there, they don't have that skill because they've never had to do it.
And in all fairness, if you look at it, up until 2 years ago, we had about a 30-year run of a very strong market, minus like a couple of blips here and there that would last a few months, right? We had an incredibly strong market. So any agent who's been working in the industry for the last 30 years, it was relatively easy to list a property and get it sold quickly. And you got to communicate that with your sellers. And that was really great news, right? For many of the years, especially during COVID, buyers were highly motivated. They were happy to overpay for a property if they could get one. They would thought it was like, so as an agent, you're always delivering good news, right? And what we probably lost through that time is the skill of communication, being able to communicate what's really happening in the market, having difficult conversations. And I think that's where so many agents are lost right now, is they haven't built that skill to be able to communicate effectively with their sellers and help them understand what's going on in the real estate market and really help sellers wrap their heads around what's going on right now. And, even as far as like pricing properties, I know that's probably the number one challenge we're seeing in the industry right now. I know even if I look in my local market, pricing is all over the place. You could have comparable properties that are listed with a $500,000 difference, right? And to me, that's just showing that agents do not have the skill to, number one, be able to communicate with their sellers on how they can effectively get their home sold. But I don't even think they know in a lot of cases, right? Because it's just all over the map right now. And this is a whole new world for most people in the industry.
Yeah. Here in Windsor, Essex, we had a pretty tough time, basically from '08 to 2011 with the economic downturn in the States, everything that happened with mortgages and banks and
Mhm.
the auto manufacturers and things like that. So realtors that were in this market around those years, they're used to having those tough conversations. We had a lot of homes stay on market, 6, 9 months before they sold. If you didn't price right within $10,000, the listing might not sell or you might not choose to take it. That being said, things shifted enormously to the other direction, rising towards COVID when prices really spiked in the GTA. In 2017, especially, we saw a ton of those retirees move down this way. So a lot of realtors haven't had those tough conversations over the last 10 years. But what I'm finding right now is you really need to get to the motivation of the seller. What is their why? Why are they moving? If they don't have a strong motivation, they're not going to be pricing it aggressively or right in the marketplace right now. And they're going to be hanging on to those for a long time.
Mhm.
So I guess on the spirit of that question, we have a record number of realtors, or at least pretty close to a record number of realtors, but like you mentioned, Rich, a significantly smaller amount of deals that are actually happening in Canada. So can we expect to get back to the 10-year ago number of realtors in Canada? I would assume not, but I'll let you speak to that. And then I guess, what are the attributes of the agents that will stay?
Well, we go back to where we were. I'm not convinced of that, but no question membership is going down and will continue to go down for a little while. In terms of how far will it go down, that's going to depend on how long the market stays like it is. Because if I go back, I know in Essex County, '08 affected you greatly for a long period of time, but it only affected most Canada for about 6 months. Like it was amazing how quickly a lot of Canada. And again, what everybody has to understand is there's the market and then there's micro markets. Like, right now, as an example, Edmonton's killing it. Saskatchewan's killing it. Montreal's killing it. But when you look at many other markets, especially in Ontario, BC, it's exactly the opposite of killing it. You know what I mean? So we all through the country, we have all these different micro markets. But if you look at the overall market in Canada, which I try to keep my eye on, there's no question it's down. So what we're going to see is we're going to see agents leaving the business because a lot of agents I know have not done a deal this year, like this year.
Yeah, and we're
Well,
recording this in June, by the way, folks.
right. So how long, can they survive? And you're right. They're gonna, they're gonna have a side hustle, whatever the case is, to try to keep it going. But if it continues to go like this, then yes, we're going to lose a lot of agents. And guess what? It's not a bad thing. I look at it and say, change is a good thing. It's always a good thing because what it does, it raises the level of professionalism. And the people that are left, they're good at what they do. They're true professionals. They're skilled. They're committed. They're doing what it takes. So I look at it and say, when this is like, a lot of people, oh boy, you're worried. And I said, I'm not worried at all. Now, I don't want, people to suffer. But guess what? We as an industry have to purge a little bit. We got to clean it up a little bit. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Again, pure entrepreneurship, risk reward. And if you're not willing to pay the price, then guess what? You're not going to get a reward. But people like you, highly skilled at what it is you do, you care about your buyers and sellers, you have their best interest in mind, probably always thinking about how can I help that seller, what can I do to get that home sold, or what can I do for that buyer. You're 100% committed to the industry. Like we've worked with you for a long time. We get it, right? It's amazing. And people like that are going to do great, but they have to be willing to pay the price. And a lot of people won't be willing to pay the price, and they're going to choose what they think is an easier path, right? Which could be a side hustle or a 9 to 5 job or whatever the case is, and maybe they'll be better there. It's okay. Like I always say, like whatever, it's okay. But I think what we're going through right now, other than the economic impact and how it could hurt some people, like that's obviously that's not good. But every economy needs an up and it needs a down. And it needs stable because that's where everything resets in the world. Like Cody, prices of Canadian real estate cannot continually go up at 10 or 15 or 20% a year. That is insane.
It's not
We did
sustainable at
we did
all.
667,000 sales in Canada in 2021. I've never seen anything like it. That can't continue, right? It was
Yeah.
fun for a while, but we got to realize that it can't continue. And by the way, we all know, I don't care if it's the stock market, I don't care if it's the real estate market, I don't care if it's your own personal emotions, right? The higher you get, right, the harder it's going to be after. Like it'd be beautiful to see a market that just went up at 4 or 5% a year forever. That would be absolutely wonderful, but it's not the way the economy works.
No, too predictable. Yeah. Um, so tough conversations is probably something that I picked out of that. I guess advice there is that some of the agents that are really they're gonna be the cream that rises to the top are the ones that are able to have the tough conversations, um, and proactively get ahead of what's happening in the pricing and obviously market it well, things like that. There's a saying in the RRI community, which I've heard you say 1,000 times, both of you actually, which is don't tell them what you can show them. How
Right.
important is that right now? What exactly does that mean in your everyday conversations with people?
Yeah, I mean, it's imperative right now. You know what I mean? Think about,
Mhm.
when you're communicating with the seller, you could tell them, you could spew off all the numbers and spend an hour talking to them, right? But how much of that are they actually going to retain, right? So you really want to make sure that you're communicating with data, show them graphs. We were on a call yesterday, actually, and one of our coaches showed us the most amazing graph. And what he created was basically it was a graph with like the lines in it, and it was essentially the percentage chance of your home selling every single month. And it's something that he shows to his sellers, and the reality is for most of the product he's selling, it was about a 5% chance of their home selling every month, right? Which is crazy. That's a very shocking statistic to hear. So that's going to catch their attention, right? And they're going to now start listening to what you're saying and be likely to motivated to price their home property to get it actually sold, right? So it's more important than ever now.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's costing realtors more than it ever has to carry inventory too. Like when we didn't do professional photography and staging on the regular and all that kind of stuff, it wasn't that expensive to carry listings. You just, had signage. It was a way on your time to make sure that you were updating your sellers on a regular basis and everything like that. Maybe advice to realtors on how they manage that cash flow. Which list do they say yes to every listing? Do they only say yes to the realistic listings? How important is it to have different, options to make sure that you're not cash strapping yourself if you are going to carry a bunch of listings in this market?
You said it, Cody, already, right? Because you were talking about the why. And I think the number one question that we have to ask a seller and probably a buyer is why are you moving? And that will determine their motivation. And if, and then maybe, so when do you want to be moved by? Where are you moving to? Like, so in other words, you need to start asking questions. And if you think about it, the greatest salespeople, they don't think about what they're going to say. They actually think about what they're going to ask. Because sales to me is a discovery process. And not just sales, but anything. You go to the doctor, they're going to ask you a whole bunch of questions before they give you a diagnosis, which
Yep.
makes sense, right? Well, we need to be doing the same thing. And I've always said that really there's one of two things it takes to sell a house. One is price. Listen, even if you got 5% of home selling, as Jaimie just said, but if you price it at a really good price, it will attract showings, activity, and everything else. Like, think about it, Cody. If you take a house and you put it on top of a set of railway tracks, like the worst location you could ever have, but you price it at 10,000 bucks, somebody will buy the house and move it.
Yep.
Right? There's always somebody willing to buy at the right price. So that's the first thing it takes to sell. And I don't want to pretend like I'm talking about underpricing property. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is helping somebody get their home sold. Now, if somebody doesn't price right, then the second thing you got to have is motivation, which is their why. So, an example, I bought a new house and I have to sell this house. Well, there's a pretty strong why there, right? The
Yep.
motivation is very, very strong. So even if a seller overprices a house up front and they want to try it there and the agent agrees with them, then if they have a high degree of motivation, even if they're at the wrong price, they'll adjust to the marketable price eventually because they don't have a choice. However, if they don't have a strong why, as you already said, then what ends up happening is if they price high, there's no motivation for them to come down. So in those particular cases in this marketplace, I think they have to say no to those listings. And like you said, there's a high cost of listings today. I was talking to a team last week. They have 47 listings right now, like 47 listings. Now, and this is in the GTA. So these are high-end homes. And I said to them, I said, of the 47 listings, how many do you think are serious about selling? And it was just a general question. And they said, I don't know, 17, maybe 20. And I said, well, I'm not quite sure where you're carrying the other 27, right? Because, you're spending a fortune. And when I looked at their P&L, their staging costs are through the roof. We can't run a business that way. It's profit is important in a business because you're not profitable, you're almost broke. And if you're almost broke, you can't serve people.
Yep. Now, talking about the number of sales, number of realtors. So we have a lot of realtors. We have not a lot of sales right now. You guys coach realtors across Canada, and there's still many that are having their best years ever, right?
Right.
They're obviously seeing an opportunity and seizing it in this market. What opportunities are you seeing in the market right now that people are taking advantage of?
So I speak with agents every day, and I'm really seeing one of two camps in agents right now, and it's a pretty clear distinction between the ones who are successful and the ones who are struggling right now. And really, the way I look at it is you have two choices. You can focus on all of the things that you can't control. You cannot control where the market is. You can't control the number of sales. You can't control so many factors about what's happening right now. So you can wallow in that. And truthfully, that's kind of the easy thing to do right now, right? Because if you can't control it, there's nothing you can do about it. So you sit back and you do nothing and you watch, right? Or you can focus on all of the things that you can control, which are your activities every day, your mental state right now. Are you like in a really good place where you can bring energy to your sellers and your buyers because they need that right now? Are you like building your skills to be able to sell homes and understand pricing strategies, really looking at every sale that's happening in your market and understanding what pricing strategies are working? How are they getting it sold? Are they selling in multiples? Are they not? What's working, right? Really studying what's going on. So the people that are focusing on all of the things that you do have control over are succeeding right now, right? And that's the biggest difference I'm seeing. We actually were doing a live market update a few weeks ago. And we aren't shying away from the truth because the reality is it is a really challenging market right now. Sales are down. We all can recognize that. And we certainly don't want to shy away from that. But if we dwell on it too much and don't focus on the solutions around that, that's when, you're just not going to achieve the results that you want. And there was a few people in the chat on this call and they were just doom and gloom. There was no turning them around. They were like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. There's no chance. We can't be successful. We're never going to do any deals this year. It was crazy what some people were saying. And it was only 2 to 3 people. But I'm reading these comments and I'm like, well, of course you're not. Like, of course you're not going to be successful if that's what you're focusing on. We're on a call and we're trying to provide solutions, what you can focus on, what you can do to be successful right now. And you aren't open to hearing that, right? You're only focused on all the bad things that are happening. And that's the biggest problem and the biggest difference I'm seeing right now between those who are succeeding and those who are really struggling right now.
Yeah, that's very well said, Jaimie. I think there's 3 things that agents got to focus on right now. And Dana Richard, who runs our coaching division, Cody, Dana, and I have a call with him every Monday. And what we talk about is, what the coaches are seeing, who's succeeding, why they're succeeding, because I want that information, right? So we can communicate that with everybody else and all start following down the successful path, if you will. First is mindset. You've got to be excited about what's happening right now. And well, what's to be excited about? Well, it's a challenge. Like, it's just another challenge. It's like you sit down and play cards against your friends and your family. You just took on a challenge. Well, that's what this is. So look at it that way. Go, okay, guess what? This is a challenge. I'm going to dig it in. I'm going to make it happen. So the first is mindset, and whatever you need to do to change that mindset, whether it's listen to podcasts, read books, have conversation with, smart people, whatever. The second is, Jaimie said, control the controllables. In other words, your activities. We're seeing beyond the shadow of a doubt, Cody, with all of our coaching members, the ones that are succeeding, guess what they're doing? They're having conversations with people every day. Proactive real estate conversation, not reactive, not responding to everybody else, but they're picking up that phone. Listen, I've been talking to members every day for the last few weeks just because I want to have a conversation. I want to find out what's going on. What are they thinking? And when you start to have conversations with people, all of a sudden that could lead to, well, geez, maybe you're right. Maybe it is a good time. Like, what a great time to buy. We got lots of inventory. Prices are down. Interest rates are down, right? And then all of a sudden, your conversations eventually lead to an appointment. So, I mean, real conversation, not text, not emails. There's always a place for that. I get that. But I mean, pick up the phone and talk to people right now. Who doesn't want to talk to real estate? Like, they all want to know what's going on, right? And then the third is your skill set. You got to say, okay, what is the one skill I need to develop right now? Because you could be one skill away from doubling your income. One skill you could be from doubling your income. So I say, if you can manage your mindset, which we all know what we're thinking at any given moment, if you can be proactive in your activities every day and lots of conversations, and then figure out what one skill do I need to develop right now and develop that skill, you'll kill it. You'll absolutely kill it, because most people are not doing that.
Mhm. I think
No,
more right now, we require more discipline than we ever have before. And, that's the biggest attribute of people who are succeeding right now is discipline, right? Because it's really challenging what we're going through right now. And you have to focus on your effort, because you're going to gain your confidence if you focus on the actions that you're taking every day, right? If you're taking care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, if you're focusing on having those conversations, that will lead to results, and that's going to build your confidence as well.
that's good advice. Before you mentioned Dana, I was going to say, have you guys ever heard of this guy named Dana? Um, Something that he's always drilled to our team is know your numbers.
Yeah.
And so, for his example of why you need to know your numbers is, let's say you're standing in line at the coffee shop. Hey, Rich, how's everything going in the real estate market? Hey, Jaimie, how's it going with maybe your newer agent? How are things going with that? And unless you know your numbers, you're going to sit there and go, well, you know what, things are really slow. They're not great. Well, if I was, looking to maybe sell my house, I definitely wouldn't be hiring that realtor. But if you know the numbers, in our market right now, there's a really, really interesting opportunity to upsize, because we're still in a seller's market where you have homes less than $500,000, but there's a total buyer's market on homes priced over $1 million. So if you're that group of people right now that might be looking at moving up, incredible opportunity. And you can have a house to sell condition, you can have a home inspection and go in with all those protections as a buyer. And that's in the same market where a lot of people are going, well, sales are down, prices are falling. But that's a real opportunity that exists. And I look at Toronto right now and it's like, man, if I was ever thinking of buying a condo, I'm seeing that there's a huge supply. There's a glut of condos on the market right now. But I think in 2029, 2030, there's not going to be any condos coming to the market, and all of a sudden there's going to be demand for them again. So
Right.
how important is knowing the numbers and being able to verbalize that into opportunity when you're having conversations with people?
Well, Dana's right. You got to know your numbers. And like, I just want to go back to something you just said. So you just said, in your market, it's a great time to upsize.
Yep.
Now, if you're having telephone conversations with your database and just having all of a sudden you might say that to somebody and they go, Cody, I never thought about that. This is what leads to business, because they don't see the opportunities, but you know the opportunities. You're a professional. So when it comes to numbers, I've always said there's a few numbers that every agent needs to know every month. And the first they need to know is what percentage of listings are actually selling. So an example of that is, you had you said 491 sales,
Yep.
right? How many, do you have any idea what was your active listings at the end of the month? You happen
Just
to know?
shy of 2,000. We're in about 4 months of inventory.
Okay, so you had 2,000 listings. So everybody listening, if Cody has 2,000 listings and he did 500 sales, that means there's 4 months of inventory, which means 25% of the homes that were listed sold. You need to know that number, right? You need to know what percentage of the listings are selling every month because that's a powerful number, especially when you're pricing a house. And you might break that down to a micro market under 500, over a million. The second number you need to know is what percentage of list price is everybody getting for their homes? And you want to know what that looks like opposed to maybe last year at the same time. So you can have a conversation with somebody. Say, well, it's really what's happening right now. Days in market. What are the days in market right now? Where was it last month and where was it a year ago? Right. And then I think the other big number you really need to know is how many homes on average is an agent selling in your market every year? People go, well, why should I choose you? You say, well, one reason you might consider me is if we got X number of agents in our market. We had X number of sales last year, which means the average agent is selling, 2.8 homes, whatever the number happens to be. And, last year I was blessed that, 35 people use me to sell their home. So, like when we say know your numbers, what you're actually doing for people is you're helping them see a problem because they don't see the problem. And then once they see the problem, then they need a solution to that problem. If 25% of the homes are selling every month, they go, oh, boy, I didn't know that. I got a problem. Yes, you need to become one of the four. Now they need a solution to become one of the four. And based on you providing them with the problem in a very nice way, you're just educating them what's truly happening. Then all of a sudden they look at you as an authority in the industry. And when they look at you as an authority in the industry, then there's much better chance they're going to pick you for the job.
Yeah, and it's one thing to brag about the number of listings that you have, but the number of listings you're carrying really don't matter. It's about what's actually selling, right? It used to be we're hiring you to maximize the value. Tom Story's been saying this on his podcast a lot lately. It used to be, I'll get you the highest dollar, but now it's like, well, I'll actually sell your house.
Yes.
That
Well,
didn't
think
mean
about
something before. Now it definitely does.
Well, there's another number, Cody, right? If you think about it, if you have 25% of the listings selling in your market monthly, and if you're selling 75 or 80,
They should
that's
know.
pretty good. Imagine going to the doctor. Well, you got to do some surgery here, and well, if you look at the average, only about 25% of the people make it through this particular surgery. But guess what? 90% of mine, who am I choosing? You
That
know,
doctor, that's for sure. That surgeon. Yep. Yep. This morning when I was driving back from the office to my house, I was just listening to your to his most recent podcast, and one thing that was mentioned by the guest, and I apologize, I'm blanking on her name. You'll know exactly who I'm talking about. She was talking about getting back into, speaking with investors now. I think cash flow in Canada was really tough to get for the last 5 years. There are
right?
homes that will cash flow positive right now. Our mortgage interest rates, you can get a 5-year fixed right now for around 4.1, 4.2. The pricing has come back to earth. And all of a sudden, that opens the opportunity to talk to investors again. In Ontario, the LTB hasn't been great, especially through COVID. But it's actually improving for the first time in a while now too. So, do you want to maybe speak to the importance of having conversations with investors again now too? Either of you can take that one.
I mean, I'll just like say something quickly, but I'm sure you'll have more to say about this, Dad. But in any market, there is always opportunity. So you just have to find out what it is, right? If you have active investors in your database, and even if they're not active right now, why wouldn't you go find 4 to 5 listings that you might feel would be a really great opportunity for them that would cash flow and bring it to them? Right? There's always opportunity. You just have to find those situations and always present that opportunity to your clients, right?
Yeah, I think you're speaking about Jennifer Gale.
Yep.
And yeah, the Gale team and Jennifer, what she has done, which I thought is absolutely brilliant, is she actually manages properties for people. So she has a team. She sells real estate and all that sort of thing. But then what she does is she realized one time that all these people sitting in my database, I wonder how many of those people would like to invest in real estate. but don't know how. They don't want to manage the property. They don't know how they can, maybe pull some money out of their house, so they can get a down payment. All those sort of things that are somewhat complicated for people that, are trying to work 8 hours a day and look after kids, right? Like it's time. So she does it all for them. So what she does is she'll have a meeting with them, and she'll, say, well, you got no mortgage on your house here. You could pull, a couple hundred grand out of here. We get an investment property. We get you return. And not only that, we'll manage the whole thing for you. We'll find the tenants. So she has one staff member. That's what they do. They find the tenants. They manage the properties, and every month they get a P&L on the property from Jennifer's team. So that's what Jaimie's talking about in terms of creating these opportunities. So right now, if you have a database of 100 people or a database of 200 people or whatever the number happens to be, you can actually do a really cool Zoom, educational Zoom, and push it out to everybody and say, if it looks like it's a really good time maybe to invest in real estate right now. Rates have come down. We had 7 rate drops in a row. Inventory is up a little bit, prices have come down, and we can actually return on investment right now on properties again. So it's probably a really good time to buy because real estate's sort of on sale right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a webinar on Tuesday night, from 7 to 8. I'm going to bring in a mortgage broker and all that sort of stuff. And you take them through the process. And then you say, and if anybody's interested, send me an email, send me a text, whatever the case is. And then you go sit down with them personally and you do an assessment on their personal situation. And then if it all sounds good, find them an investment property. Then you get to manage. She charges 6% of the rent to manage the property for
I
them,
think
which
she charges 9. I just
or
listened to
nine,
it.
sorry. Okay, so did you? So 9% to manage the property. So she's got another little business model there. And then what happens with an investor that has one, guess what they might want? Two. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so that's what I mean. We've got to get creative, especially in this marketplace.
Yeah.
And Jaimie said it. There are opportunities right now. Upsizing in your market's an opportunity, right? Investment properties to people in your database, opportunity. There's all kinds of them, but you got to communicate that opportunity to them.
Yeah, and so Jennifer, what I pulled out of that is that she identified the 2 biggest pain points and took them away.
Right,
So investors are like, well, I don't know where I'm going to get the capital from for the down payment, and I don't want the phone call to fix a toilet. So she
right.
goes, well, I'll show you how to get the down payment, and also I'll take the phone call on fixing the toilet.
Brilliant.
Yep, love that. So we have a young guy at our office named Jake, and Jake, his wife had their first baby last year. And Jake's kind of, moping around the office because, as you can relate to, Rich, and maybe Jaimie, you didn't see this as much because you're so infatuated with the brand new baby when you have a brand new baby. But we go through this thing as new dads where we're like, oh, this is great. You know what? Love that the new baby's around, but I wonder if my wife still knows that I exist, right? Now, to her defense, she's busy sustaining life of this new baby that we're so looking forward to. And for the next 6 months to a year, yeah, you know what? We're kind of on our own, and that's okay. We understand that. And so Jake was just kind of moping around the office, and he's like, I just kind of need something to do. Business isn't that busy right now. And I was like, you know what, Jake, I think you need a project. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, your wife's really busy with your new baby, and I know you guys are happy about that, but you need to keep busy too. And there's not a whole lot that you can do when the baby's hungry. So you might as well keep busy at work. So I said, I think you need a project. I think you either need to buy a house and renovate it to rent it out, or maybe build a new house or something like that. And he's like, why would I do that right now? Like, I'm not that busy. And I said, well, if you start having conversations with 3 HVAC companies and 3 electrical companies and 3 plumbing companies and a flooring installer and a framing crew and a masonry crew, guess what? They're all going to be wondering, oh, you know what? I thought the real estate market wasn't, great, but here's this guy, investing into property, and you know what? He's actually hiring me to do work. So if I was looking for a realtor, why wouldn't I be looking for this guy who's, doing what I was kind of hoping to do myself? And I hope I didn't push him too far, but he went and put his house up for sale, and they went and bought a lot, and they started building a home. And all of a sudden the guy's really busy. And I don't know if it's directly relatable to that, but to Jennifer's point, I think if you have a side hustle that's relative to real estate, it can really help. And I witnessed this myself because when I started buying properties, I had to meet, siding installers and handymen and all that kind of stuff. and I would start using them on all my properties. And then all of a sudden I would be getting calls from them because guess what? They're handy people that like to fix up and sell homes too. And then I started doing a little bit of property management, not because we wanted to, but out of necessity. We were selling a condo project and we had an investor from out of town who bought some units. And he said, okay, well, I bought them, but who's going to manage them now? We're like, well, we don't know. There's no property management companies around here. And he goes, well, you guys have some units in the same building. Why don't you manage them for me? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I guess we could do that. We'll try and figure out property management. We have to do our own anyways. But it ended up being a source of business, and we didn't expect that because we would have retirees call us and go, I'd like to sell my home and I want to downsize. I don't know if I'm ready for the condo life yet. And we'd go, well, this is great. We have an apartment that you can rent for 1 year. Try it out first, see if you like the condo. And they were scared to put their home up for sale because they didn't know where to go to. And all of a sudden, we're helping out our landlords that we sold properties to because we're able to put tenants directly into them. The retirees were like, well, this was great. I could just sell my house. I didn't have to worry about bridge loans because I didn't want a mortgage, all that kind of stuff. I can try out condo living. Some of them end up buying a condo after, and some of them end up just loving the whole rental lifestyle and putting the money from the sale of the house into their GICs or something like that and pay the rent with their GICs. And it actually ended up being a stream of business for us. And so for younger tenants, if you have a younger tenant, eventually they want to buy a home. So if you take
Yep.
great care of them as a tenant, they end up being a buyer client if you take good care of them too. So I love the idea of a side hustle relative to selling real estate because I really think it can help you actually in your real estate sales career, whether that's managing property, flipping homes, maybe investing with a builder or developer, getting some stuff off the ground, all that kind of stuff. I would really like to see everybody in real estate selling real estate full time and have a side hustle relative to the industry. I don't see it going well when the primary is not in real estate and you're trying to do real estate as the side hustle.
Couldn't agree more. See, Jennifer hired somebody to do it. Well, now she is a non-selling team leader, right? So easy for her because she has a lot of people on her team. But her number one job is to lead that team. That's her number one responsibility is to lead that team. The number one job of her salespeople is to sell real estate. That's their primary responsibility. But going back to what you just said there, Cody, it all comes back to having conversations, doesn't it?
Yep.
Like we talked about having conversations every day with people. And all of a sudden, you had a conversation with somebody that maybe wanted to buy a condo but didn't want to sell their house. They have a conversation with you and they go, oh, that's great. We can figure this thing out. Next thing you know, they're renting a condo and you're listing their house. It's what I said earlier. Listen, have 5 proactive real estate conversations every single day with people, with people. And if they happen to be contractors, that's even better. If they happen to be, you know, like, and it's amazing what happens when you have conversations with people.
It's all about relationships. That's really all it is, right? And it's like, I love the idea of a real estate side hustle as well, because you're able to demonstrate your value in relation to real estate and establishes respect, right? And the expertise that you bring. But it all comes down to building relationships, right? And no matter how you do it, you can do it in so many different ways. Like it doesn't matter. Do it however you'd like, but focus every day on building great relationships with people and doing a really phenomenal job at what you do.
Yep. And something else happens too. When you start doing renovations, you end up learning a new language
Mhm.
in regards to, types of flooring and different types of plumbing and insulation and electrical, all that kind of stuff. When you start investing, you start speaking the language that investors speak too. So I think I guess a good thing I could add to this conversation is learn another language. Now, maybe
Yeah.
literally learn another language, and you might be able to service, another demographic of clientele that don't just speak English, or learn another language like numbers and investing and renovations and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. Um, Back to narrow and deep. Um, Maybe speak to the importance, if you guys will, of doubling down on the area that you're in rather than spreading yourself too thin to try and make up for the business that you feel you might be missing.
I think especially right now, what's going on in all the different micro markets is just a testament as to how you really do need to specialize in what you do. Because even if you look at downtown Toronto, condos are having a real rough go right now, right? But detached homes are selling relatively well downtown Toronto. So even in those two markets, like there's completely different situations going on, right? And so I can't imagine that as an agent, if you're spreading yourself across multiple markets, that you can really be an expert in what's going on, right? So I think now it's more important than ever to specialize in a specific area, understand everything that is happening in that area, and go all in, right? Be the absolute expert in that area. I think it's more important than ever because we're just dealing with so many different situations. There's different things happening in different types of property in different areas. I just can't imagine that you can do a great job if you're spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah, you said be the expert there. And I think
Mhm.
when you are received as the expert, you don't have to cheapen your service either just to get business too, right?
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
My dad always says price becomes an issue where there's lack of value.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
I kind of see an opportunity too when everybody's doing less business on average, naturally they're going to scale back on their inputs into marketing, into geofarming, all that kind of stuff. Well, now my dollar might actually go further if I start doubling down on all that kind of stuff. Like we have a Tim Hortons in our area, and it's next to an oil change place. And depending on the month and how good the real estate market is, you might see anywhere from 7 to 12 realtors in this little, it might be 15 by 20 foot section of this wall in this Tim Hortons drive-through. And so I'll be talking to new realtors and they want to, start generating leads and all that kind of stuff. And they're like, okay, well, should I start buying signs around town and stuff? And I'm like, well, there's 14 on that wall over there. The chances that they're getting a call from being one of that 14 ain't great. So why don't you go do what no one else is doing right now? I think that's where the opportunity is.
Yeah. Well, I think today as well, I think a key word is authority. I think people are looking for authorities in a space. So you mentioned Tom's story. He's a great example of somebody who has a very successful podcast. And I would consider him an authority in Toronto real estate. And that's why it's so important to go narrow and deep. And I remember I wrote a book, I don't know, 18 years ago or so, and I was down in New York City and I was shopping for publishers. So I was having these meetings with publishers, and the publishers would always ask me, so who is this book for? What is your market? And I continually made a massive mistake. I said, for everybody. I said, I want anybody to read this book and love it. And they all looked at me and shook their heads and said, no, no book is for everybody because you have to decide who you're going to market this book to. Well, Cody, you got to decide who are you going to market to.
Yep.
And part of marketing is to be seen as an authority. If you're going to do a market update on a monthly basis, well, what are you going to do? A market update for, Southern Ontario? No, you got to do a market update for your marketplace. And a lot of people think it's better to go wide because there's more opportunities. The problem is when you go wide, you're vanilla, they don't see you, you don't get picked.
And it's expensive.
It's expensive. And the minute you go narrow and deep, you say, this is my market. This is what I'm going to own. Whether it's a geographical farm, whether it's a property type, it doesn't matter what it is or a certain geographic, but I'm going to own this market and all the content I put out is going to be relatable to this market right here. I don't care what's going outside of that market. And it's a tough decision for a lot of people to make because they think they're leaving something behind, but they're not leaving something behind. They're actually gaining something from it.
Yeah.
Another huge mistake I'm seeing agents make right now in all the conversations that I'm having is they aren't committed to the process. So going back to narrow and deep, if I'm having a conversation with an agent, I'm like, okay, well, talk to me about how you generate business, right? And so often they'll say, well, I tried door knocking. And I'll say, okay, tell me more about that. What did you do? And they'll say, oh, I went out door knocking 3 times. And I'm like, well, door knocking 3 times is not going to produce you the result that you want. Right. And there's so many ways you can generate business. You don't have to door knock, but you do have to commit to something, whether it's farming. Farming is not sending out 2 flyers for a month. Farming is flyers consistently every week for months and months and months. It's getting involved in the community, hosting events in the community. Like there's so much more to it. So another thing, if you're thinking about generating business, is you got to go all in. You got to pick a path, go all in, and give it time. Focus on consistency over a long period of time, because that's the only way you're really going to be able to build a successful business.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it with consistency over time. Because everyone's like, well, I can be consistent for a month.
Yeah.
But if I think about my workout schedule, it's not yielding great results if I'm really consistent for 1 month and then never again. And so I think it's really easy to say, okay, I'm going to do one big postcard mail out, or, I'm going to host this community event. But it's that thing where you got to be seen 7 places before it really takes effect in people's mind, where it's like, oh, well, Jaimie's the realtor in that area now. I saw her putting on an event, sponsoring the Easter egg hunt. She sponsored a soccer team. I think I saw her billboard and heard her on the radio. But if you just do one of those, and again, if you go really, really wide, it could be expensive. But if we focus on just one neighborhood in one town rather than a whole town or an entire county, but we do it consistently over time, I think you're going to yield a lot better result every time.
It's the key.
No
And it's the
question.
hard way to do it, right? It's easy to do it a few times and say it doesn't work. The hard thing is to stick with it over a long period of time. So it's why most people won't do it, but it's the only way to be successful.
Well,
Yeah.
Cody, let me tell you, I worked it really, really hard yesterday morning. And I woke up this morning and I looked at myself and I said, it didn't work. I looked the same.
We have a workout group, and the only way I consistently work out is with accountability. So for 2 years I had a personal trainer and it was great. And now I have workout equipment in my house, and so I invited a number of guys to come over and work out at my house. So twice a week at 5:30 they all show up at my house and we work out for an hour. And it's a good group of guys, and it's nice because we start with a prayer and a devotion too, and we encourage
Yeah.
each other and family and work and everything. Um, but this week I canceled our workout on Tuesday because I was really tired from work and a few other things, and I didn't sleep well. And then on Thursday, which is today, we ended up doing a breakfast instead of a workout. So I really don't. I might expect a little bit different after this one, but I think the key there is accountability and having other people hold you accountable. It's important too. I don't have the
Yeah.
discipline to give myself that accountability, and I know you guys kind of specialize in that word. I think that's a big thing that your organization is really based around.
So
Yeah.
many people fight it. So many people fight accountability. Nobody wants it, right? People get into real estate for the freedom. They don't have to report to anybody,
Yeah.
right? They can do whatever they want. But the reality is like that's not how you build a business, That's not how you achieve great results. You got to lean into accountability. And there's so many different ways of being accountable. You could hire a coach, you could have a group of people you meet with every week, you could have a partner. Like there's so many ways you can do it, but the more accountability you have, the better chance you're going to achieve the results you want.
Yeah.
And it's actually a simple process. I say to everybody, I said, if, well, how do I be accountable? And I said, well, listen, just give me one place that you are not consistent, that you want to be consistent. Like, so maybe it's 5 calls a day, right? Or maybe it's working out every day. It doesn't matter. I said, that's where you got to be held accountable. Like if you can name, and we all can do that, right? We all can name somewhere we're not consistent that we know we should be consistent that would produce an amazing result in our life if we were. That's where you need accountability. You don't need accountability for everything. Like you really don't. Like there's a lot of things I need no accountability for. Like reading would be an example. I'm an avid reader. I love to read. I don't need to be held accountable to read books. I just do it on my own because I so much look forward to it. Right.
Yep.
And on the other hand, like you said, working out, I have a trainer come to my house 2 or 3 days a week, and I can do cardio on my own. I can get on the Peloton bike and ride till the cows come home because I love it. But lifting weights, I go, oh my God. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but weights are heavy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they are.
So anyway, Shannon comes over 2 or 3 days a week to my house and we do weights together. And I promise you, if she didn't show up, I'd probably have another coffee.
Yep. It's way too easy. So you guys have been great. I appreciate you taking all this time to talk to me. Can I ask one more question? It might be a little bit of a loaded one. But I think it's important to get back to the basics right now.
Yeah.
If you're working on your business, whatever your business is, I think the basics are important. And I'll let you guys say a little bit about what you think the basics are. And again, this is a loaded question. I'm kind of setting you up to knock it out of the park here. When I hired Dana to be my coach, probably going back about 10 years ago, and he's still my coach now, I hired him for lead generation because I said, Dana, I know how to handle the business. I just need more of it. So how do we, let's fill that bucket. And it took like 3 or 4 or 5 years of him saying, you don't need more business. You're not handling the business you have well enough. We got to work on the basics. And I didn't want to hear it for years. And it probably took 5, but I finally got it. And that's a big part of the whole RRI culture. How important are the basics? What are the basics? And is lead generation the way to build your business, or is there a better answer?
I actually heard something really interesting. I was on a webinar and he did a poll and he said, okay, what's your biggest problem in your business right now? And the option was generate more leads, conversion, or fulfillment. And of course, what do you think everybody said? Everybody said leads, right?
Yep.
Everybody said they need more leads. But he said, you got it totally backwards because you probably need to focus on your conversion and your fulfillment, and then you'll get more leads, right? If you have really phenomenal service and fulfillment, you're going to get more referrals, right? If you convert more of the leads you already have, you don't really need more leads, do you? Right? So I think some people have it backwards. I mean, at the end of the day, you always need to focus on business generation. And that can look different for everybody. There's so many different ways you can do it. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is having active real estate conversations. I don't care if you're in a coffee shop starting up a conversation, if you're calling your past clients, if you're standing in an open house having conversations, the more real estate conversations that you have is going to lead to more business. Right. And I think so many people have this stopgap with it where they're either scared to make the phone calls, they say they're not motivated to do it, or they don't do it enough. And I think we have to let all of that go. Focus. The first thing you should be doing every single day is having conversations. Set a goal. If it's 5, if it's 10, you can decide what that is. You need to be having those conversations before you do anything else. We were on a call yesterday with all of our coaches, and one of our coaches mentioned, she's like, it's so crazy. I love to see this, but I had clients who said they would never do an open house. They would absolutely never do an open house, right? They wouldn't do it. They're not interested. But of course, now we're dealing with a challenging market and people are more open to doing things they said they wouldn't do. She's like, what I love to see is it's actually working. They're putting on a phenomenal open house. They're having great conversations. They're generating business or booking appointments from it. It's actually working. So we need to stop saying things don't work or we don't want to do it. Let's put our ego aside and determine what activities you need to be doing every single day to achieve the results that you want. Do that and it'll work. It works for everybody, right? Like It's very simple. It's not easy, but it's an incredibly simple process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to be unbelievably self-serving here. I'm going to make this suggestion, but I'm not talking about our company, just our company. I am such a believer in the coaching process, and here's why I am. Real estate agents are undertrained. When they got the real estate license, they learned nothing about how to sell real estate, like nothing. Right? They didn't learn anything about time management, financial management, how to convert a lead, all those sort of things. And it's a really, really, really lonely business. They're by themselves. So what I'm going to suggest is this, is they need to have a coach or a partner or somebody in their life that has nothing but their agenda in mind. Nothing.
Yep.
Right? I mean, the only thing that person that you're working with wants to do is help you, right? There's no hidden agenda, because you talked about Dana and the relationship you have with Dana. Dana does not have a hidden agenda. Dana wants to help do one thing. I'll help Cody any way I can help Cody. That's my job. That's my job. And Dana has this massive amount of intelligence behind him where he sees, as well as all of our other coaches, they see what everybody is doing every day. They know the best practices. So not only can they sit and have a conversation, understand you, and try to find out what problem you really want solved, right? Then they have the intelligence, to solve that problem. So I would say find somebody, and it could even be, it's not a coach, maybe it's just a mentor in your office, right? That is doing better than you, that has a lot of experience, that you could spend some time with every week or every 2 weeks. And just pick their brain and find somebody that has nothing but your best interest in mind.
Yeah.
So important to seek out guidance as well, because what happens so often is when we're working in our own business, we lack perspective so often, right? So if you bring in somebody else who has experience in real estate, whether it's a coach, whether it's a mentor, doesn't matter, they kind of can come in and look at your business from this bird's eye view and help you identify a lot of small changes that you can make to make a really significant impact in the result you're seeing, and just starts asking questions to get you thinking about things maybe you haven't thought about before. Right? Just like Dana did with you, Cody, right? You came in and you're like, I need leads. And he's kind of looking at everything. He's like, leads is not the problem here. Right. Yep. And so he identified a problem that you didn't know you had. So they offer this very interesting perspective on your business, which can help facilitate quick growth, right? And really helping you achieve the results that you want, maybe in a way you didn't think you would, but in a way that's really effective.
Great answer. Love it. A little bit self-serving, but no, it's the actual truth. I'm just kidding, Rich.
Yeah. No, I know.
I couldn't agree with it more. And again,
Yeah.
it doesn't always have to be someone paid, like you mentioned. You might be able to get a mentor around the office. Find someone who's doing what you want to do. And you know what? Maybe even just offer to help them with their business, and naturally they're going to mentor you too.
100%.
When I was in your Mac group, we read a book called Tribe of Mentors, and I would say strive for that too, right? Have a mentor at the office. Have a mentor with a coaching company. Like the more you have, in the book of Proverbs, it talks about a king not going to war without having wise counsel. And I think that that's great. And that is sometimes going to give you different perspectives. Like Jaimie mentioned, a fresh perspective, especially if it's from a different industry and things like that too. But there's total benefit to that. So I love that answer. I can't thank you guys again enough for all your time today. Is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with? And then the other thing is, how can they find you? How can they listen to what you guys are putting out? And I believe you have an awesome event coming up in November. I think it'd be great for everybody to hear about that too.
Yeah, we have a great real estate conference called Masters Academy coming up on November 18th and 19th. If you're interested, I'll send you all my info and Rich's info, Cody, so you can add it to the description. But it's going to be a great couple of days. I know for any agent out there listening, I know it's challenging right now. I completely understand, but you just got to power through. You have to keep going. Don't stop. Don't sit back and wait for things to get better. Get proactive. Focus on everything you're doing every single day. And I can guarantee you will come out of this challenging market stronger than ever.
Yeah. And I would just say, if people want some help, go listen to our podcast, the Richard Robbins Show, because we've been interviewing people and trying to be very specific in their teaching. We're trying to find somebody's strength in their business and share that strength, with the audience. So there's a lot of, it's like free training, really. Mm-hmm. So that would be a good idea as well.
Appreciate that. And lastly, the name of the book that you wrote, Rich?
Deliver the Unexpected.
Yeah. Great saying around the RRI community, and it's an awesome book. I think your audience is primarily real estate agents, but honestly, I think anybody could benefit from it. It's just obviously you can't afford to market it to everybody, right?
That's right. That's true. But thank you, Cody. This was a real pleasure, buddy.
Thank you, Cody.
And thank you for being such a wonderful human and a wonderful customer for so many years. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys too. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the show, folks. Please keep in mind that this show is not offering legal, financial, or accounting advice, but rather opinions and experiences in the world of real estate from the host and the guests. If you're enjoying the show, please rate, review, and share with your friends and colleagues. And if you think that there's someone that needs to be on this show, please feel free to connect them with me. Or if there's a topic that should be discussed, feel free to let me know. Thank you so much, and bye for now.